Today I'll show you how to use Fulcrum One to get a small stereo system powered by a single Driveflex amplifier up and running. In a case like this, chances are you won't be using a room model to do any mapping, so we can keep our project file really simple. If you'd like to follow along, download and install Fulcrum One. It's free. Our system today will be a pair of CCX15s and a pair of CS118 subs powered by a Driveflex 424. Connecting to the Driveflex is pretty straightforward. Just connect both the Dante and the Ethernet ports to your network. Fulcrum One works great over Wi-Fi if that's easier for you. If you're using an analog audio source, be sure to use the lower terminal block here that's labeled line. You won't need to worry about setting any of the dip switches or gain adjustments on the amp itself, so we're ready to jump into Fulcrum One. Let's create a new project. First, let's find our amps on the network. Click on the Devices icon in the upper left corner if it's not already selected. This panel allows you to manage and control any amplifiers and immersive processors that are available on your network. Engines are immersive processors, so we'll go down to the Amplifiers section and press the plus button. Any Driveflex amplifiers on the network will show up here. If you're following along and you don't have an amp, you can click this Driveflex 424 button to add an offline amp. Offline amps are placeholders that allow you to configure your system off-site and then link to physical amplifiers once you're on-site. So I'll click Add here, and now we can see that our 424 shows up in our panel. If we expand the input section, we can see our 4 inputs and how they're assigned. For each channel, we have a small meter so we can confirm our input signal, a mute toggle, and this mixer icon that will give us access to our input controls. I'm using Dante sources, but if you're using the analog inputs, you'll switch them here. I'll make sure we're set to 0 dB here under the input controls and not muted, and then we can continue to assign the rest of the input sources. I can see that things are already where I want them, so I don't need to touch anything else here. Okay, time to add our loudspeakers to the system. I'll click the loudspeakers icon in the upper left here. This panel is where we manage the loudspeakers in our system. I'll click the plus and select loudspeaker. And we're presented with a library of Fulcrum acoustic loudspeaker settings. We'll need to download the settings for the loudspeakers we'll be using. You can always grab them all at once, but for today, I'll just grab the CCX15 and the CS118. Now those are downloaded, so I'll click on the CCX15 and select the coverage pattern that I want. Now that's added, I'll go back in here and add a CS118. Now I'll duplicate each speaker by selecting and hitting Command D. Now I'll organize real quick by hitting the sort button to reorder our speakers and then rename them left and right. You'll see some buttons on each loudspeaker that are similar to the amp inputs. You have a mute, a solo, and a mixer icon for processing. We'll have a look at these settings a little later, but for now, let's have a quick look at the 3D view. We can see that all the loudspeakers are just stacked on top of each other in 3D space at the origin point. Since we're not using a room model or any mapping, this won't be a problem for us, but I find it helpful to place them in 3D space just to easily visualize my system. You can use the properties on the right here if you want to get fussy about the exact location, but I'm just going to place them basically where I want them and call it close enough for rock and roll. Now that we're organized, we can connect our loudspeakers to the outputs. So we'll go back to the Devices panel, expand our Output section here, and you'll see a familiar set of icons for each channel. Let's click the mixer icon to configure the routing. If you were using third-party loudspeakers, here's where you'd set up your processing. You have all your filters, you can add an FIR, and set up the limiter. With Fulcrum loudspeakers, you only need to select one of the loudspeakers we've already added to the system. So on the right, we'll select our top left box. And now the limiter and FIR options aren't available because the optimal settings are already applied. You don't need to do anything else. We'll add our top right box to output 2 and our subs to 3 and 4. Because our subs can handle more juice than is available on our output channel, you'll see an indicator on the sub-channels that lets us know that the limiters have been adjusted to protect the system. The last thing to do is to connect the inputs to the outputs in the matrix. I'll open the settings up for our top left box on Output 1 and open the Matrix tab. There are some shortcuts on the left here, but I'll do it manually so you can see how it works. You can see there are 4 zones that represent our inputs. Input 1 will go to our left boxes, and input 2 will go to our right boxes. I'll click here to assign input 1, set it to 0 dB, and make sure the mute is off. Open up the settings for output 2 and we'll assign input 2. Left sub will be input 1 and right sub will be input 2. And that's it. Our system is up and running. The last thing you'll want to do is set up some groups. Groups make it easy to apply processing to multiple loudspeakers or outputs at once. You can solo groups as well to make things easier as you're tuning your system. Let's create 3 groups for our loudspeakers. Over on the right, click on the Groups button. Click on the plus button 3 times to create 3 groups. Rename them Tops, Subs, and All. Now we'll go back to the Loudspeakers panel and open up the setting for our top left box and open up the Groups tab. Add it to Groups Top and All and assign the rest of the loudspeakers. You'll see that these green icons have appeared to let us know that our loudspeakers have been added to one or more groups. Now we can easily solo or add processing to any of our groups. One other handy thing to notice is that if you add any processing to a group, loudspeaker, or output, the mixer icon turns blue to help you keep track of where you've made changes.